Combustion. The reason your stove cooks, your car moves, and your morning toast burns. But that chili you had last night burned your tongue so much you were sweating as you ate. That wasn't combustion though. Spiciness isn't actually heat. The molecule responsible, capsaicin, doesn't raise the temperature at all. Instead, it hijacks the pain receptors that normally detect dangerous heat and tricks your nervous system into thinking your mouth is on fire. And yet, according to the Pokédex claim in Pokémon Scarlet, Scovillain's red head converts spicy chemicals into fire energy and blasts the surrounding area with a super spicy stream of flame. This is a contradiction. If the spicy chemicals are being turned into flame, then they're being chemically destroyed, burned up into smoke and gases. That should make them completely unspicy. Meanwhile, the amount of energy needed for a flamethrower-like blast is enormous for a living creature, and the heat should cook the creature from the inside out. So we are about to pit Scovillain head to head with itself. Can Scovillain realistically make a biological flamethrower using super spicy chemicals without violating real thermodynamics, chemistry, and biology? We will assume, even though it seems incredulous at first, that the super spicy chemicals do act as a fuel. We will nonetheless test the claim made by the Pokédex against real science. If Scovillain can produce a visible stream of flame that blasts the surrounding area, then every burst must supply enough fuel, enough airflow, and enough heat shielding to avoid cooking itself. And there's another complication. The attack is supposed to be super spicy. But if those spicy chemicals are actually burning to produce the flame, can any of them survive the fire long enough to irritate anything? To keep this realistic, we'll model the attack as a short burst, similar to the plume produced by human fire breathers. Real fire breathing works by atomizing liquid fuel into a fine mist and igniting it as it leaves the mouth. If Scovillain is doing something similar, then how much fuel would each burst require? First, what are spicy chemicals in the real world? The main spicy chemical is capsaicin, an organic molecule with the formula C16H27NO3. Capsaicin is hydrophobic, meaning it can dissolve well in fats but poorly in water, which is why water doesn't put out chili pain, but whole milk does. In chili plants, capsaicin is largely produced in the placenta tissue of the fruit. Second, why does capsaicin feel hot? That's just because it activates the TRPV1 receptor in sensory neurons. Your body interprets that as burning, even if no genuine burning is involved. Third, how do you produce a fire? Fire is the result of combustion, which releases heat and light. It is rather straightforward to make a fire. All you need are three things: fuel, oxygen, and ignition energy, typically in the form of high heat. Capsaicin is combustible, though it will not ignite readily and has a melting point of about 62 to 65 degrees Celsius or 144 to 149 degrees Fahrenheit, according to a safety data sheet. In other words, capsaicin can burn, but it's not as eager to light up as a typical fuel like petrol. Fourth, despite its ability to combust, can capsaicin remain spicy inside a flame? This is the major roadblock. You see, capsaicin does not retain its structure at extreme heats. A 2024 study on pyrolysis meaning breaking down with fire, reports that foods rich in capsaicin are not recommended to be heated beyond around 265 degrees Celsius, 590 degrees Fahrenheit, because they undergo significant breakdown above this temperature, with pyrolysis producing multiple volatile compounds. But typical flame temperatures for common fuels such as propane and methane are on the order of 2000 degrees Celsius or 3500 degrees Fahrenheit. So, if capsaicin containing droplets pass through the hot core of a flame, they will largely decompose or combust, which destroys any chance of retaining spiciness. This investigation has plenty of other potential roadblocks such as fuel supply, oxygen access, recoil from the intensity of the flamethrower, and heat shielding. But one constraint is the real deal breaker because it attacks the heart of the Pokédex claim. I've already mentioned it. If Scovillain truly converts spicy chemicals into fire energy, then those chemicals are being oxidized, broken down into combustion products. That is literally what happens when chemicals are turned into fire, i.e. chemical energy is transferred to thermal energy. But a super spicy stream of flame implies that intact capsaicin-like molecules are reaching the target's body, where they trigger TRPV1 and cause burning pain responses. Those two goals fight each other. To make a big flame, you want complete combustion. To make it super spicy, you need incomplete destruction. So, a flame can be huge or it can be spicy, but for it to be both, Scovillain must engineer the jet of flame so that a significant fraction of irritant survives by avoiding the hottest part. That implies a sophisticated two-phase attack, a burning fuel component to generate visible flame and heat, and a cooler sheath or trailing aerosol rich in capsaicin droplets that never fully enters the hottest combustion zone. Now we need a plausible blast size. Real fire breathing produces a dramatic plume by expelling a mouthful of fuel as a fine mist and igniting it. So let's model Scovillain's attack as a similar burst. Let's consider how much power, i.e. how much energy in 1 second, Scovillain would be releasing. For now, let's say Scovillain releases 1 megajoule, although Charizard could produce as much as
3.3 billion kilojoules. Do you realize how much energy this is?
1 gram of fat contains roughly 38 kilojoules. This means Scovillain would need to convert the chemical energy from 26 grams of pure fat or oil to thermal energy. That's a couple of big spoonfuls. Of course, this assumes Scovillain can store and expel this safely. We also need to make this super spicy, so what concentration of capsaicin would that imply? For that, we use the Scoville Heat Unit, SHU. A common conversion used in analytical context is SHU is equal to parts per million of heat times 15. 1 million SHU is approximately 67,000 ppmh or 6.7% spicy chemicals by mass. 1 million SHU is about as hot as the spiciest cultivated peppers or pepper sprays. Despite this, if Scovillain's 26 gram fuel stream were 6.7% spicy chemicals, that would be 26 grams times 0.067 is approximately 1.7 grams spicy chemicals per blast. That is about a similar composition to typical pepper spray formulations. Yet this doesn't take into account the fact that a significant portion of that 1.7 grams would be destroyed by the flame unless it gets engineered well. Are you following? The limiting factor isn't merely whether it can burn spicy chemicals or not. It's whether it can burn enough to make a flame while simultaneously not burning enough to keep the stream chemically spicy. capsaicin is insoluble in water. Remember that it's hydrophobic. So Scovillain can't just keep spice cubes dissolved in its bloodstream and squirt it out. Instead, it would likely need to store its capsaicin, like any other plant storing some hydrophobic compound, in an oily resin. Basically, Scovillain would expel an oily, dry, sticky, irritating fuel mixture. This is in contrast to spitting cobras, which spit a watery venom up to several meters away. Scovillain would therefore require a much higher ejecting pressure and valves that prevent backflow into its airways. Human skin can suffer deep burns with surprisingly low surface temperatures, around 60 degrees Celsius, 140 degrees Fahrenheit, for 5 seconds, or 70 degrees Celsius, 158 degrees Fahrenheit, for 1 second, can produce deep second to third degree scald injuries. Now, compare that to flame temperatures around 2000 degrees Celsius or 3500 degrees Fahrenheit for many fuel gases like propane. Even if Scovillain's tissues are briefly exposed and cooled by airflow, the mouth region must be built like a heat shield with mineralized protein surfaces with low thermal conductivities, thick mucus layers that are sacrificial and easily replaced, and water-rich tissues acting as heat sinks. This isn't impossible in principle. Biology can make remarkable composites. But it means Scovillain's red head is less a normal mouth and more a heat shield like that used on the space shuttle. Okay? Scovillain may be able to withstand the heat of a flamethrower, but can it even trigger one? Flames don't appear out of nowhere. Something has to start the reaction. In industrial burners and flamethrowers, this is usually done with a spark. A spark requires a very strong electric field. Under normal conditions, air breaks down at roughly tens of thousands of volts per centimeter. That might sound impossible for biology, except nature has already done something similar. Electric eels can generate hundreds of volts using specialized cells called electrocytes, stacked like batteries. While that may not be enough to jump a large spark gap in open air, it does show that evolution can build high voltage systems. If Scovillain uses electricity to ignite its attack, it would probably need extremely small spark gaps between sharp conductive structures acting like electrodes near the mouth. It would also need excellent insulation so it doesn't electrocute itself mid-attack. Although we proven Scovillain probably can't exist a long time ago, let's finish with a brief discussion of energetics. Using Kleiber's law, we can determine that a 15-kilogram mammal-like organism would demand a resting energy requirement a quarter of that of an adult human to survive, assuming allometric scaling. This means one big flamethrower, or worse, overheats, could cost something like half a day's baseline energy, even if Scovillain supplements with photosynthesis, including when it uses solar beam. The problem remains substantial. Theoretical maximum solar to biomass efficiency is less than 10% on a good day. Scovillain would require lots of sunlight, a large effective photosynthetic area, and an energy-rich diet. There's a reason a creature like Scovillain doesn't exist even if it could. In theory, Scovillain could be a convenient renewable energy resource, turning organic chemicals into heat on command. But the requirement to be super spicy means it emits a biologically active irritant that could cause serious eye damage risk and respiratory problems, among other hazards. Capsaicin involved in plants as a defensive chemical. A roaming animal/plant hybrid spraying capsaicin-rich aerosols could reshape predator-prey interactions, deterrence behavior in mammals, and potentially the frequency of wildfires. In summary, Scovillain would be a roaming combination of a pyromaniac and a riot control dispenser, with the temperament of two heads that disagree on everything except villainy. Scovillain producing a super spicy stream of flame was probably destined for incredulity. However, it doesn't compare to the sensational claim of being able to exhale air cold enough to freeze lava.